Factorio Fun Mode is a mod which, to varying degrees, both does and doesn't live up to its name. Like spawning in a ring of fire. Fun, right? I mean, if that's what tickles your fancy, don't let me stop you. Once it's extinguished, I scavenged a crash site for materials like normal before opening my menu to look for the fun and finding every single icon offset randomly. Ew. There were rocks around, but the drop, well, you'll see. So I end up mining coal and stone by hand so we can start getting some proper mining going. Soon the fun finds us, however, since as you will know from the intro, you can indeed fall down and apparently up cliffs, and it will immediately kill you.
Huh?
It's moments like this I wish I had recorded my microphone whilst I was playing, as the full-on belly laugh I had here watching my body slide away from me is now lost in time. Do you want to know what else is a little bit fun? A smidge goofy? A little bit silly, perhaps? The hitboxes on these fucking cliffs are fun and awesome and fill me up with joy. I take my joyous fury out on a rock, but this was predicted and 6 biters clown card out of it after my ass. We escape immediately into hot pursuit of my corpse as it meat crayons across the desert landscape. With all of my easy stone sources being regrettably replaced with rapid, rambunctious, rebellious arthropods, we must return to mine the stuff from the ground, and on my way back to get my corpse, I get remote telefucked by a cliff, which puts the fun in my fun mode. After getting some copper on the boil, I get ready for science by starting my power plant. This mod completely removes the need for underground pipes by making every single fluid connection an underground, which is really nice, but would probably be a pain in the ass for complex fluid areas. Not that I would know, because spoilers, my joy completely boils over before I get that far. With it hooked up to water, we can bring some power over to near the iron, where we will place the labs. Yes, that is a large power pole, and yes, that is all we have for the first part of the game, because the developer X-Threat loves us, and wants our run to be full of fun. I can actually get one back over this mod, as there are these challenges in the tech tree which give us extra lab productivity, but they seem to be bugged because you just don't have to do them. Like, you can just start it and it doesn't check to see if you've done the requirements, so it just gives you the productivity. I honestly don't know if the mod developer was just relying on the player's integrity, which I have none of, or if it's bugged and I hit the jackpot. Either way, free 60% lab productivity. Obviously, if I'm getting something good, then something bad must come immediately after, in the form of a fistful of information to the teeth that you can in fact now drown, and it's somehow even more annoying than tripping over a cliff, because you don't even get the Wilhelm scream. Now that we're researching, we can craft assemblers, and okay, who the fuck sat on them? I'm so confounded I have to send a photo to my Discord server to make sure I'm not just arriving at the early stages of cognitive shutdown. Besides looking like they've been through a hydraulic press, they also undulate as they work, which is a bit balked on the vertical versions, but when you see them oriented horizontally later, it's going to make a bit more sense. Great suffering breeds greater resolve, and I managed to hand automate gears and green circuits to make handcrafting important stuff easier. I didn't mention it earlier because it wasn't that important, but burner miners actually mine out a 4x4 area around them, similar to how electric miners do in vanilla, but in exchange for this, electric miners only mine out what's directly beneath them. It's awful, and makes the fact we have to space them out more because of the large power poles that much worse. Even worse than that, crafting underground belts only gives us 1 instead of 2, so to get a pair, we have to craft it twice, and we end up with loads of odd numbers in our inventory. Some of you might have noticed this already, but every time a piece of coal burns, it produces a fish, and we have a recipe that deletes fish one at a time. I don't like where this is going. Now that we actually have a source of fish, since the lakes are completely empty of them, I can start an assault on the biters. You might notice me not even bothering with the shotgun I have in my inventory. Well, that's because I discovered earlier it can't hit nests, so it's essentially useless. We're finally just about getting to the point where I can set up furnace stacks, but the question of how to effectively power pole them still hangs heavy on my mind. If I just made it a bit bigger, it would be trivial, but that isn't a sacrifice I'm willing to make, so the answer is copious amounts of underground belts. Whilst I'm fixing the stack to fit the power poles, I get a little bit of hate mail from X-Threat, letting me know that my current research has been reset. Thanks, bro. Anyway, despite the best efforts of my tormentor, we have iron automated only 53 minutes into the run. World record pace, surely. Of course, smelting burns coal, which means it creates fish, which means my smelting stacks have a fish filter. Explain that, theists. The fish we separate just goes straight into an assembler to get eviscerated. I quickly get a copper smelting stack together too, and bing bang bosh, we have all the resources we need to make the first 2 science packs. The use of large power poles actually exposes a problem which you don't see very often in vanilla. All of the power poles here have the maximum number of connections already, so won't connect to the incoming power lines. Luckily, there is a little known use for copper wire which allows you to connect and disconnect electrical lines with one in your hand. With that done, we finally have an automated science pack, and you can see how the assemblers should be moving when they're working. Plugging it into the lab, we can begin to research longness, which is the study of the long inserters. I didn't mention it earlier, but quite a few items are put behind pointless texts like these, including me needing to research chests at the start of the game, and a tech that is introduced later called green, which just lets us research green items like stack inserters and tier 3 assemblers. I try to use my usual green circuit design, but realise there isn't really any way to power the inserters taking from the middle wire assembler, so we're going to go off ratio with this one. The hardest bit is definitely trying to get both the iron in and the circuits out of this little 2-tile side on the right, but I do eventually make it work. I'm building some ammo assemblers when I realise that for some reason fast inserters can only be placed facing down, and as it turns out yellow inserters can only be placed facing right or left, but it just so happens that up to this point I never even tried placing it any other way, so I never found out. While still recovering from that left hook, I get a straight right in my teeth in the form of this mod's new and improved steel recipe. 2,500 iron turns into 1,000 steel plates, which in fairness is actually twice as much steel per iron compared to vanilla, but it takes a whopping 27 minutes to smelt. You could fit 3 steel axe percent speedruns in the time it takes to smelt a steel in this mod. Whilst pondering this horrific reality, I see a biter potter down to the south, and on my way to intercept it in what should have been an easy fight, I die twice to fucking cliffs. Considering how long steel takes, I'm going to sort it out now before we even finish green science, because I don't fancy sitting on my hands for half an hour just to be able to make engine units. I eyeballed the new ratio of iron to steel furnaces and accidentally made it 1 iron furnace to 2 steel, when it should be 2 iron to 1 steel. Large power poles also make the transition from iron to steel a lot harder than it needed to be, and took up a lot more space too. Coming out of my fugue state, I realised 2 of my boilers aren't working, and yep, they are clogged up with fish. Fuck my life. You can't even just pull it out with a burner inserter either, because it will pull coal out too. So I have to use filter inserters, which means I need to power them, which with big power poles means this is all a lot more difficult than it needs to be. Oh yeah, and burner inserters, 30-second crafting time. Observe now as I pause OBS and a green science setup spawns into existence, which ended up being harder than I expected because I completely forgot blue inserters only point down. Okay, so I can do this at least, which is very ugly and makes my cog brain very sad, but ultimately works. This death isn't even bullshit, I just at this point genuinely have been severely cognitively impaired by the psychic shock damage this mod bestows. This one is bullshit, however. The engineer must be as drunk as a sailor to fall up a cliff from that far away. The furnaces for steel are filling up very slowly, so I manually move some to help it along. Part of the reason for this was a fish backup on the iron line, which I fixed by moving the splitter closer so iron couldn't get in the way past the last furnace. That's a lot of fish. So many in fact that I expand the fish grinder to make sure steel production doesn't get affected. I soon realised that my lab design wasn't able to pass science to the second row of labs, because the first inserters will sometimes pass a pack the lab is already full of and deadlock. and I was so cooked by this point that instead of thinking of something smart, I just stopped chaining labs. I want to upgrade my gear assemblers to using blue inserters, and in Factorio Fun mode, you rotate the build, not the inserter. Finally, some steel smelts, and that means only one thing: engines. I want a car, and I want it now. Before I can craft it, the mod hits me with a splash potion of dementia, making all research take 50% longer. When I try to drive the car, it won't let me because I need to get a driver's license from the DMV. Obviously I'm too stupid for that, but we can research how to forge one and do it that way. So I etch my driver's license into an iron plate, and can now illegally embark on my journeys. Forging a driver's license, as it turns out, does not imbue you with the skills of a licensed driver, so I'm weaving around like all hell. The mod does wank around with the controls a lot, so all this struggle is genuine, and not just because I'm a shit driver. Driving also does not make you immune to drowning, although it does nothing to the car. I have to be very careful when retrieving the corpse not to accidentally push it into the middle of the water. Sorry, corpses. I'm out scouting when a group of biters sneaks upon my copper mine, so I have to hightail it home to kill them, and then on my way back out,